The Royal Mint pulled a batch of Kew Gardens 50p pieces from circulation in 2009. 210,000 of them went out, against the 22 million they press for a standard issue, and the ones that didn't get hoarded are still turning up in people's change today. I found one 3 years ago in a till at a boot fair in Stafford, paid 50p for it, sold it for $140. Now, I'm not telling you that to sound clever. I'm telling you because I nearly spent it. I had it in my hand at the tea van, going for a cup and a bacon roll, and something made me look at it properly. That something is what this is about. Not luck, not a metal detector and a field in Shropshire, just knowing what to look for and doing it quickly enough that the coin doesn't disappear into a parking meter before you've had a chance. Let's go through the ones worth checking. All of them findable in ordinary change. All of them identifiable without a loupe or an app or a subscription to anything. The first thing to understand, the only rule that actually matters, is mintage. That's the number of coins struck for a particular issue. Not the year, not the metal, not whether it looks interesting, the number. The Royal Mint publishes these figures freely on their website without charge. You can look up any commemorative 50p or $2 a coin issued in the last 30 years and find out exactly how many were made. Most people don't bother, and that gap between information being available and people actually having it is where most of the value sits. Here's why mintage drives everything. Coins are small, durable, and they circulate. 1 million people might handle a particular 50p in the first year it's in circulation. The ones with low mintage figures get hoarded early because collectors spot them fast, which means fewer survive in high-grade condition, which means the ones that do surface later carry a premium. It compounds. The rarer the issue, the earlier the hoarding, the fewer the survivors in decent nick. Compare two coins. The standard 2018 representation of the People Act 50p with a mintage of about 5.9 million, and the 2011 WWF 50p with around 1.4 million struck. Same denomination, same size, same metal, but one sits at face value in a price guide, and one sits at $5 to $8 to the circulated, more in better condition. That difference is entirely mintage. Now drop the mintage below 500,000 and the numbers change more sharply. Below 300,000 and you're in genuinely scarce territory. Below 200,000 and you're looking at coins that, in fine condition, can change the shape of an afternoon significantly. So before we go through the list, hold that number, 500,000, as the threshold. Anything above it, in ordinary circulated condition, probably isn't going to make you rich. Anything below it, you want to look twice. One more thing on mintage. Some issues have what the Mint calls change mintage figures. That is, coins actually released into general circulation, alongside separate figures for collector packs and presentation sets. A coin that went into a presentation set but not into circulation is technically struck at a lower effective mintage for the purposes of finding one in your change. This matters for a few of the Olympic 50p's, which I'll get to in a moment, but the principle is the same. Fewer made means fewer available, means more valuable when one does appear. Right, Kew Gardens. The one everyone's heard of. And the reason I want to spend a bit of time on it isn't to cover old ground. It's to show you why knowing about a valuable coin isn't the same as being able to identify one. The design is the famous Chinese pagoda, which stands in the Royal Botanic Gardens at Kew. Struck in 2009, 210,000 issued for general circulation. For a standard 50p run, that is a small number. The next lowest mintage 50p issued around that period is in the millions. So Kew Gardens sits in a different category altogether. Now, mintage being public knowledge, and this coin being genuinely famous in collecting circles, you might think everyone has long since swept them out of circulation, and largely you'd be right. Collectors were on it early, dealers were on it, and finding one in your change today is rarer than it was in 2012. But they do still appear. I've heard from people who found one as recently as last year. The ones that weren't hoarded went into the general pool, and some of them are still rolling around. Circulated condition, worn, a bit of muck in the detail, you're looking at $60 to $80 realistically. Better condition, $100 to $150. Uncirculated, out of a presentation set or mint-sealed considerably more. The 140 I got at Stafford was for a coin in what I'd call very fine condition. Decent detail, no significant wear, some surface marks but nothing that killed the design. The thing to know about Kew Gardens specifically is that the pagoda design is quite fine in its detail. The fine lines around the tower, the circular border pattern, these wear quickly. A heavily circulated example has that detail softened, which hits the price. So when you're checking one, look at the pagoda structure itself. If you can still see clear lines rather than a soft blob, you've got something worth putting aside. Now, the reason awareness of this coin hasn't cleaned it out of circulation entirely is interesting, and it applies to everything else on this list. Awareness without recognition is useless. People have heard that Kew Gardens 50p is worth something. But when they're standing at the checkout, change in hand, 3 people behind them in the queue, they don't look. Or they look and they're not certain. Or they are certain, but they've got somewhere to be. The coin goes in the machine or across the counter and it's gone. The awareness paradox on Kew Gardens has done something else, too. Because it got so famous, collectors cleaned up the supply aggressively, which made the coin scarcer still, which made the price go up, which made it more famous. It fed itself. But here's the useful consequence of that. The attention lavished on Kew Gardens meant that a handful of other 50p's with comparable or better fundamentals flew under the radar. Some of them still are. Those are the ones I want to get to. In 2012, the Royal Mint issued a series of 50p coins to mark the London Olympics. 29 different sport designs in total, each one a different discipline, each struck at a different mintage. This is where the series gets interesting, and where most people who know a little bit about this topic still go wrong. The mistake is to assume the Olympic 50p's are either all worth something or all worth nothing. Neither is true. The majority, 26 of the 29, have mintages ranging from about 1.6 million up to nearly 4 million. Those are worth face value in circulated condition. Nice enough coins, and if you kept the full set in good nick, there's modest collector interest, but individually in your change they're not going to do much for you. 3 of them are different. The Aquatics 50p, swimmer 50p denomination, had an initial mintage of around 600,000 for the first version. But there's a wrinkle. There were 2 versions of this design. The first had flowing lines across the swimmer's face, which some people, and eventually the designers apparently, thought obscured the portrait too much. The design was revised. The first version, with the lines across the face, is the one collectors want. Mintage around 600,000, price in circulated condition somewhere between 2 and 5, more in better nick. The revised version is worth face value. The difference is visible to the naked eye. Look at the swimmer's face. Lines across it, or not. The Triathlon 50p, mintage around 1.16 million for the circulated version. Not as scarce as the Aquatics first version, but in the lower range for the series, and prices have settled at roughly $2 to $4 for a circulated example. Recognizable by the combined cycling, swimming, and running image with the characteristic diagonal motion. The football 50p. This is the one I want to spend a moment on, because it has a detail that most people sorting through Olympic coins miss entirely. The football design shows a goalkeeper making a save, arms extended, the ball at the top of the frame. Standard enough. Mintage around 1.125 million for the circulated issue. In that range, it attracts some collector interest, circulated examples at 1s to 3s. But there's a specific characteristic of this coin that affects its value, and it's to do with the goalkeeper's positioning. In the standard design, the figure is roughly centered, but look at the goalkeeper's hands relative to the edge of the coin. On the standard strike, the outstretched arms sit within the circular border. On a small proportion of coins, not an officially acknowledged variant but documented by collectors, the proportions are slightly different, the figure reading as shifted. Now, I want to be precise here. This is not a catalogued error in the way the undated 20p is a catalogued error. What you're actually looking for with the football 50p is simpler than that. It's condition and mintage working together. The design has a lot of fine detail, netting, figure detail, ball texture, and coins where that detail is sharp will always command a premium over flattened examples. With this one, more than most, condition is doing real work. So the 3 to pocket from the Olympic series, the aquatics first version with lines across the face, the triathlon, and the football in good condition. Everything else in the series, unless it's pristine and you're building a complete set, is broadly face value in change. Now errors. This is where people either get very excited or very confused, and both reactions tend to cost money. A minting error is not a coin that looks a bit different because it's worn, or because you're looking at it under a phone torch in bad light. A true minting error is a mechanical or process failure at the point of striking, a die misalignment, a missing design element, a doubled image, or in the most famous British case, the omission of a date entirely. The undated 20p. In 2008, the Royal Mint changed the design of the 20p coin for the first time since it was introduced in 1982. In the old design, the date appeared on the tails side. In the new design, the date was moved to the head side. During the transition, a batch of coins was struck using the old tails die and the new heads die, both of which independently had no date on them. The result, coins went out without any date at all. Around 250,000 of them, it's estimated, before the error was caught. When these first surfaced, prices were speculative and all over the place. They've settled now. A circulated undated 20p in decent condition realistically fetches $50 to $100 depending on the platform and the buyer. In better condition, up to $150 or more. Presentation-grade examples in slabs, third-party graded, which I'll come to, have gone considerably higher at auction. The thing that makes the undated 20p useful to explain is the reason so many were spent rather than kept. People found them, held them up, decided they must be a foreign coin or a fake, and spent them anyway. The coin looks right in every other respect. Correct size, correct weight, correct design on both faces. The only thing missing is the date, and if you don't know to look for it, you won't notice it's gone. So the check for the undated 20p is simple. Look at the head side, which shows the Queen's portrait. On a post-2008 coin, the date should appear to the right of the portrait. If there's no date there, look at the tails side, the Tudor rose design. No date there either. If both sides are dateless, you've got one. Put it down carefully and don't drop it down the back of the sofa. Other errors worth knowing about. Die cracks, hairline fractures in the die that produce a raised line across the coin's surface, are relatively common and mostly add modest value at best. A dramatic die crack on a scarce coin in good condition is different, but on a common coin it's a curiosity rather than a windfall. Doubled dies, where the image appears slightly doubled due to a misaligned second strike, are rarer and more valuable, but you need to be confident you're looking at a genuine doubled die rather than a worn coin with a tired surface. If in doubt, the error coin forums, and there are several active ones online, are genuinely useful for comparison images. The rule I was given, and it's held up. If a coin looks wrong, check why before you spend it. Takes 5 seconds. Costs nothing. Right, $2 coins. I need to clear something up before I go through the worthwhile ones, because there's a persistent piece of nonsense floating around that bimetallic means valuable. The 2 coin in its current bimetallic form has been struck since 1997. In the years immediately after it launched, some people assumed that all 2 coins were collectible simply because they were new and looked unusual. That assumption has calcified into a myth that certain corners of the internet still circulate. It's not true. The standard circulated $2 coin, any year, any common design, is worth £2. No more, no less. The bimetallic construction tells you nothing about value. Mintage does. With that out of the way, which ones are worth a look? The 2002 Commonwealth Games series. 4 coins, 1 for each home nation, England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, each with its own mintage. The Northern Ireland issue had the lowest mintage of the 4 at around 485,000. In circulated condition, you might get $5 to $10 for it. In better condition, more. The other 3 nations ran at between 588,000 and 650,000 roughly. so they're in the lower value bracket but still worth noting. The 2011 Mary Rose tube saw mintage around 1.04 million circulated examples at 4 to 8 to. The design shows the Tudor warship, which has good fine detail. The hull structure, the rigging, and condition matters here in the same way it matters on the Olympic coins. The 2002 hologram Commonwealth Games $2, different from the regional series above. This one has a hologram in the outer ring of the coin to mark the Manchester Games. Mintage around 650,000. Prices for circulated examples vary, but you're typically in the $3 to $6 range, more for undamaged examples where the hologram is intact. Now, condition, and specifically the edge. The 2 coin carries text around the edge. On the standard issue it reads either "Standing on the Shoulders of Giants" or similar. On commemorative issues, the edge text varies. Condition on a $2 coin is readable from the edge lettering before you even look at the face. If the edge text is crisp and clear, you've got an uncirculated or lightly circulated coin. If the lettering is soft or partially worn away, it's circulated. This is the quickest single check you can do. Here's why that matters practically. A 2011 Mary Rose $2 in fine condition, good lettering, sharp face detail, is worth notably more than the same coin where the edge is worn to mush. The premium isn't tiny. A dealer I know in Shrewsbury keeps a tub of circulated Mary Rose 2s at $4 each. His uncirculated examples, edge intact, face sharp, sit at $12 to $15. Same coin. Edge condition is doing all that work. So when you're picking up a $2 coin to check it, turn it on its edge first, before you even look at the design. Sharp lettering, keep checking. Worn lettering, put it back. Let me give you the physical check I actually use. Not an app, not a website at the till. 4 seconds, done by hand. I do this in the moment. Queuing up, change in hand, coins already in my palm. I'm not holding people up, I'm just not turning straight to my wallet. First, denomination. 50p or $2, those are the 2 I'm checking. 1p, 2p, 5p, 10p. Not relevant for this exercise, put them aside. 20p. Quick glance at the head side for a date. That's the undated check. Takes 1 second. $1. There are some worth noting, but it's a separate conversation. Common ones are common. Second, for a 50p, I look at the design. I know the ones I'm watching for. Kew Gardens Pagoda, Olympic Aquatics first version, triathlon, football. So the check is just recognition. Does this match one of those? If I'm not sure, it goes in my pocket and I look properly later. The cost of taking it away is 50p. The cost of spending it is potentially much more. Third, condition check. 1 second, no loupe. Is the central design clear? Can I see detail that should be there, or has it worn smooth? If it's worn smooth, it's worth face value. If the detail's there, I look more carefully. Fourth, for a $2, edge text, as described. Sharp or worn. That's it. The whole process runs while I'm still at the counter. 4 seconds for 50p's, I know. A couple more if something's unfamiliar. I've been doing it for years. My wife finds it mildly embarrassing, which I regard as an acceptable price. The reason I don't rely on an app. The apps that identify coin values from a photo work reasonably well for common commemoratives in good condition, but they struggle with worn coins, unusual angles, and lighting variation. They also take time to load, require a reasonable photo, and sometimes return values that are wishful rather than realistic. Fine for home use when you've got the coin on a desk. No good at a till. The physical recognition method is faster, and once you've got the key designs memorized, more reliable. The designs you need to have locked in are Kew Gardens Pagoda, Olympic aquatics swimmer with lines on the face, the simple shape of the triathlon's triple sport composition, and the Commonwealth Games 2 shields if you're doing the $2 check too. That's 4 images. Study them once at home, on the Royal Mint website or on eBay sold listings, and you'll carry them in your head for the rest of your life. All right, you've found one. Now what? The first decision is whether to sell immediately as a raw coin, meaning ungraded as found, or to pay for third-party professional grading before you sell. Grading, for the uninitiated, means sending the coin to a professional service. In the UK, the main ones used are PCGS and NGC, both American but widely accepted by British collectors. Where it gets examined, assigned a numerical grade on a scale that runs up to 70 for a perfect strike, and then sealed in a tamper-evident plastic holder called a slab. The slab carries the grade, the denomination, the year, and the certification number. Grading costs money. Currently, the basic service tiers at PCGS and NGC for UK submissions typically run from about $20 to $40 per coin, depending on turnaround time and submission route. You usually submit through a dealer or club rather than direct. There's also postage and insurance. So you're realistically spending $25 to $50 to grade a single coin, depending on how you do it. This only makes commercial sense above a certain value threshold. My rule: if a raw coin is likely to sell for $100 or more, grading is probably worth considering. Below that, you're at risk of spending more on the grading than you add in value. A Kew Gardens 50p that would sell raw for $70 probably doesn't need a slab. The same coin in what looks like uncirculated condition, where a high grade could push it to $200 or more, is a different calculation. The practical effect of grading is twofold. First, it confirms authenticity, which matters more as coin values rise. Forgeries of scarce coins exist, and a slabbed coin from a reputable grader is easier to sell because buyers trust the certification. Second, it establishes condition objectively. When you're selling a raw coin and you describe it as about uncirculated, different buyers interpret that differently. When a grader says MS65, everybody knows what that means. For most of what you'll find in change, raw selling is the right move. eBay sold listings give you realistic prices quickly, sort by sold, not listed, because asking prices on coin listings are often fantasy, and if the coin is identifiable and the photos are clear, you'll get a fair price. The errors are the exception. An undated 20p in very fine condition or better is worth grading, because the certified market for that coin is active and the premium over raw is significant. One more thing on selling. The platform matters. eBay reaches the most buyers and will usually give you the best price for a single scarce coin if you run it as a 7-day auction with a low start. Fixed-price listings underperform auctions for genuinely scarce coins because you're capping the upside. For lower-value common commemoratives, an Olympic triathlon 50p at 3, or a Mary Rose 2 at 6, eBay fees eat your margin and you're better off accumulating a small group and listing them together, or selling through a Facebook selling group for the area. Collector fairs still work for mid-range coins if you don't want to deal with postage and buyer questions. I've sold at a handful of fairs over the years, and the transaction is simpler. You show the coin, buyer looks at it, you agree a number, it's done. No dispute resolution, no postal risk, no feedback rating. The downside is you're reaching a smaller pool of buyers, and you may leave money on the table compared to an eBay auction. Depends on your patience and your postal appetite. Let me put this more plainly. There are two versions of you leaving the supermarket today. The first version has a handful of change and tips it all into the loose coin dish on the counter when they get home, or straight into a parking meter on the way back to the car. No particular thought, just change. The second version takes 4 seconds at the till, recognizes the pagoda, or spots the face lines on the swimmer, or notices the missing date on the 20p, pockets the coin separately, and checks it properly later. That's a different afternoon. Sometimes it's a different few £100. The difference between those two people is not luck. It's not a metal detector or a specialist's loupe or a subscription to a price guide. It's just knowing what you're looking for, which is, if I think about it, what my Uncle Derek was on about all along. I want to tell you about a coin I sold at a fair in Ludlow. Not the Kew Gardens one. That went to a collector in Stafford who knew exactly what he was buying. This was a 2002 Commonwealth Games Northern Ireland Tootles that I found in a change tub at a clearance house in Telford. The tub had a handwritten label on it. Old coins, 50p each. I bought about 30 coins from it, most of them worth face value, a couple worth £1 or £2. The Northern Ireland $2 was in there, edge lettering still sharp, face design crisp. I paid 50p for it from the tub. Sold it at Ludlow 6 weeks later for £8 to a chap who was putting together a complete Commonwealth Games set. When I told him where I'd found it, a clearance house tub 50p label, sitting there for who knows how long, he laughed. Said something like, "I've been looking for that one for 2 years. It had been in that tub the whole time. Probably came out of someone's kitchen drawer when a house was cleared. It had sat there because nobody who'd passed through that clearance house in however long had known what they were looking at. That is the whole thing, right there. The coins aren't hidden. They're not in a field or a vault or a specialist auction. Some of them are in circulation right now, in your change from the newsagent, in a jar on your mother's windowsill, in a tub in a clearance house with a 50p label. They are findable. The only thing between the coin and you is knowing which one you're looking at. Here's the short version of everything I've said. Mintage below 500,000, always look twice. Mintage below 250,000, treat it seriously. For 50p's, Kew Gardens 2009 at 210,000 is still the headline, but the Olympic Aquatics first version and the triathlon are worth pocketing. For 2 Alice coins, Commonwealth Games Northern Ireland is the standout, Mary Rose is worth checking, edge lettering tells you condition before anything else. For errors, the undated 2008 20p is the one to know. No date on either face is your check. Condition matters on everything, and it matters more on designs with fine detail. For selling, eBay sold listings for realistic prices, 7-day auctions for scarce single coins, grading only when the coin is likely to sell above $100 raw. The Royal Mint website has mintage figures for everything they've issued. Free, no account needed, more reliable than any app or price guide. Tonight, if you've got a jar of change or a tub from a recent house clearance, tip it out. Run the 4-second check on every 50p and every 2. Check the 20p's for dates. It takes 10 minutes and it costs nothing. And on the right day, it pays for something considerably more than a bacon roll. If you find something, or if you've already found something and want to share what you got for it, drop it in the comments. The most useful information on this channel has always come from people doing the actual work, not from me talking about it in a shed. Prices shift, new finds come up, and a comment from someone who sold a Kew Gardens last month tells you more about the current market than anything I can give you from memory. Next time I'm covering old tins, printed lid biscuit tins, tobacco tins, the ones that come out of British kitchen clearances in bulk. There's serious money in some of them, and almost all of it is in the lid rather than the base, which means most people are throwing away the right half and keeping the wrong one. We'll sort that out when we get there.